Hey everyone, welcome back to the Engineered Angler. This week, I don't have anything to hang on my board, so we need to make a lure. And what I want to make is a spy bait. And not the typical spy bait, which is generally pretty small and narrow and looks suspiciously like it might have been made from a typical crankbait mold. But I want to make it look like a mullet, the most popular bait out there in the ocean. So I want it to be a saltwater lure. Let me show you what it's going to look like. So since I want a saltwater spy bait, I want it to be a saltwater species, and I want it to look more or less like a mullet. Now this is a little bit rounded for a mullet, but it looks pretty similar, and I think the paint job will actually kind of finish off the effect. But the shape is what's going to make it a little different from the typical spy baits you see out there, which look like they've just taken an old crankbait mold and put a couple of little propellers on the end of it. You can certainly imagine that it originally was a crankbait design. So ours is going to be a little saltier and hopefully a little better. So to complete the design, we're going to have a couple of beads to act sort of as bearings for the propeller, and we'll have that same effect in the back. Now the only difference is that I want to have my propellers counter-rotating, just to make sure that I'm not imposing any kind of turning moment on the body. And these fins are actually, for the first time, are going to be functional. I do want these fins to stabilize the lure as it's flowing through the water. These lures are really kind of a finesse lure. You let them sink low near the top of wherever the strike zone is going to be, above the grass or above rocks, and then you slow roll them just enough to keep these propellers spinning. That makes noise, it creates vibration in the water, and attracts a bite. That's the hope. And before we get to the dimensions, let me show you what I want to make it out of. The kind of wood I'm going to use is going to play a part in how this thing behaves, because I don't want this lure to be difficult to get to sink. I'm not going to have a whole lot of interior room for it to have a lot of lead in it. So I need to make it out of a dense wood. This is cherry, and it has a really nice tight grain that makes it really easy to carve. It shapes nicely, holds a good hard edge, and its density is higher than all these other woods that I've been using. This is red maple, the closest to the density, and it's 0.575 grams per cubic centimeter. And cherry is 0.686, which is enough of a difference in density that it'll be a lot easier to put the weight in this thing compared to even going with red maple, and especially not with anything like cedar. Because while a light density wood like that is going to make it really easy to cut and carve, it's going to make it a nightmare to try to get enough lead in the body to get this thing to sink parallel and have a nice buoyancy, stability to keep it nice and upright as it's falling through the water and you're pulling it with the line. And if you're new to the channel, my name's Franco. I'm a professional engineer, a lure designer and lure maker, and an avid fisherman. And I make these videos to share a lot of the tips and tricks that I've learned along the way, and to put a little bit of engineering and physics into the art of lure making. So let's talk a little bit about the dimensions on this lure. I really don't want a very big lure, so I'm looking at about 3.5 inches in the body length, or about 89 millimeters. And the height of the lure body, not including the fins, is about 1 inch, which is 25.4 millimeters. And just for you guys just getting started, 3.5 to 1 is a really nice ratio of length to height for almost every lure. And I want the body really nicely tapered with the wide point about the center of the lure, or just forward of the center of the lure. And I drew that with the help of one of my ship's curves. And if you want to get some of these, I found them on Amazon and I put them in my Amazon store. And just as a reminder, just about everything that I use in the shop, I have in that Amazon store in case you guys are needing it. And the thickness of the lure is going to be right around 5/8, or about 16 millimeters, give or take. And because this thing is going to be a little bit complicated to put together with the wire harness and the weights, I'm going to go ahead and cut my wood into 2 thinner planks and make this lure by sandwiching those 2 pieces together, embedding all the hardware and shaping the outside to fit my vision. All right, let's get started. All right, now that we've got these cut, I want to go ahead and glue them back together temporarily. And I'm going to use some of this Elmer's double stick tape runner stuff. It's easy to apply and holds it pretty firmly, but you can get it apart again when you're ready to. And I'll clamp them together with these little clamps just to be sure I get a decent adhesion. And I want to leave this with some pressure on it for a while, probably about an hour, just long enough for me to have lunch. I went ahead and put tape on this thing and transferred the drawing down to the tape. Now, my white ink pen didn't work very well, so it's a little rough looking, but the details and the final finish really come in the shaping at the end. So the drawing really is to make sure that I've got the right dimensions and a good general shape to get started. Time to go to the bandsaw. Now that we have it cut, I'm going to go ahead and remove the tape, and I'll just set it here for possible use later. And I'll put tape on the top because I want to go ahead and draw the profile of the lure looking down on it. I'll usually draw these contour lines with my ship's curves, but it's nice to try to do it freehand. I need the practice. Okay, so with these guidelines drawn, I'm going to go ahead and just do a very rough cut just to take off most of this mass so I don't have to sand and shape through all this meat. I'm not going to try to get it perfectly aligned with the lines. I want to leave the lines in place so I can use those later to refine the shape. So shaping to meet these contour lines isn't too difficult. What's a little difficult is getting this shape too. This is the cross section of the lure right about in the middle. And as you can see, it has that sort of elongated upside down droplet kind of shape where it's substantially narrower at the bottom. The widest point is just above the center of the lure, up and down, and it has a nice organic sort of curve to it. And the shaping is going to consist of getting that shape while you're getting this shape. You have to do it slowly, and using the belt sander, really the best way for me. You could do it obviously by hand carving and then sanding all those marks off, but I've gotten so used to that belt sander, that's where my confidence lies. Let's get to it. So you can see just in a few minutes I get the contour in that direction pretty well. But knocking down this big thick part at the very bottom to get that upside down droplet shape is going to take a little while. I'll get back to you when I'm a lot closer. All right, so that was really only about 5 more minutes worth of work. I'm getting pretty close to that shape. You can see I'm using the seam line as my center line, and I did that, of course, with this too. Of course, there's still a lot of marks on it. It's still a lot of work to do. What I need to do now is to round over these hard corners, and that's just a matter of doing like a 45-degree chamfer across the corner on all 4 and then rolling those over. That's actually the easiest part, even though it makes the biggest difference. Let's get at it. And here we are about midpoint. You can see it's starting to round off pretty nicely. Still kind of blocky out the bottom, but I'll get that done pretty quickly. And I'll get back to you when we're just down to the final hand sanding. And then we'll do some carving, I think. So I've got the shape pretty much how I want it. The only thing is there's a little bit of a difference in symmetry. And right now I'm chasing symmetry. I've got one side that's just a little bit fatter. So I'm using some 80 grit sandpaper. And as I get it closer, I'll be using a 220 sanding stick to finish it off and some sanding blocks. And I'll probably sand it all the way to about 380, maybe 420. I don't really need it that smooth. But the smoother, the easier it is to see any kind of defects in the carving. But as I'm doing this, I'm thinking about what the next step is, which is figuring out how much weight I need to put in it. To do that, I need to know what the volume of the lure is. To do that, I need to weigh the lure because I'm going to use its density. But I need to decide at what point do I stop sanding and just leave a little bit of sanding at the end when I glue it all back together. Because remember, this is two halves right now. I still got to pull it apart, put all the weight and the hardware in it, glue it back together, and then do a final sort of refinement sanding. Not to mention, I still got to carve the gills in, which I do want to do. So I have to make that decision. How refined do I want this sanding? The answer to that is as refined as I can get it at this point. Of course, there's going to always be a little bit of sanding at the end when I put it back together. Hopefully that won't take much weight off. And in my experience, it really doesn't. And the fact that I'm making this lure to be a moderate sinking lure in salt water, which means about a foot per second, maybe a little faster, a foot and a half per second of descent rate when I let it go in the water. So I'm going to keep sanding, getting it as smooth as possible. I'll go ahead and carve it while it's still temporarily glued together. And then we'll work on the propeller and harness because we're going to need that to figure out the weight. So before I actually do any of the carving and draw it on there, I like to establish where the eye is going to be. And then what I do is I drill a little bit of a hole, stick the bit in there, and use the bit to align the other hole. Now I'm ready to go ahead and drill these eye sockets. I need them now because I use them to align the gill carving. And there you go, that's what they look like. Now I'll go ahead and draw in the carving detail. And for that, I use the original drawing on the tape. I'll put it on here, and using a razor knife, I'll outline the carving details. Then I'll copy them to the other side. All right, and once again, the drawing is rough, but the finish should be pretty clean. And I'll usually just freehand the drawing onto the other side, but for you guys who are starting out, although there's probably a lot of you guys who freehand a drawing much better than me, but I'm going to use this method. It's basically turning over that original drawing and using just some Scotch tape, some clear cellophane tape, and then mark around the carvings with the knife again, and then highlight it with the pencil so I can see it. And that gets me pretty close side to side. And these are going to be pretty subtle carvings because I plan to put foil over the whole lure. I've got the carving pretty much where I want it. I'm going to go ahead and just separate it, which will be really easy because this thing has been wanting to move on me the whole time. So now it's just a matter of drawing in where I want the wire harness so that I can go ahead and make it. And the old glue comes off pretty easy with a little bit of acetone. All right, that'll do it for now. Now I'm just going to go ahead and draw in the location of that harness. It's going to draw a straight line from the tail to the mouth, more or less straight. And then I know I want my belly hook eye right about 1/3 of the way back, maybe a little less than 1/3, right about there. So I'll go ahead and do that. That'll be a real simple harness. And I'm using this 195-pound leader wire. So the tricky part is I have to estimate enough wire to go down and come back up, go out, and then have a twist end on this side and a twist end in the front with plenty of room for all the other hardware, the propeller and the beads. So I'm going to err on the side of too big. So first I'm going to make a twist eye on one end. And I want to keep track of how much wire I use for everything I do. So I'm going to set this to 1 inch because I know that works. And that's what that looks like. And now with the beads and the little propeller on there, I want to go ahead and align this where I think I want it, leaving it plenty of room so it doesn't pinch the propeller. That looks about right. And then I'll mark it with my hands for that first bend. And I'll just bend to 90 with these little jeweler's pliers. And that looks about right, a little over 90. And that looks like it's going to work. And then I'll just mark it where I need to bend it for the return. Make sure I'm bending in the right plane, and that goes 180 all the way back. And then I'll make the last bend, aligning it with the front part of the harness. Best I can anyway. And that looks pretty close. Now comes the tricky part, because I know I need 1 inch for the wire twist, but how much do I need for the other hardware? So looks like I need about 3/8 of an inch. Looks like it'll do it. And for you guys who do the easy stuff, that's about 1 centimeter. So that means I line it up and I measure back 1 3/8 of an inch. And now I got to mark that with a pen. I'll double check my measurement and it's right to the center of my mark. That's perfect. And before I put the propeller on, I got to make sure it's going to spin the opposite way. And you can't just turn it over. You actually have to give it a twist in the opposite direction that it came. You can see they spin in the opposite direction. Now I can place this on my twister and I'll make sure to align my mark with that 1 inch where it's about 1 inch away from the pin. And then we form my eye. I'll cut off the excess and get it twisted in. All right, there it is. Let's go ahead and check it and make sure the size is right. All right, that looks pretty doggone close. We definitely can go with that. Now it's just a matter of working out how much weight to put in this thing. And to work that out, I've got to weigh the lure, the harness, the 2 hooks, and the 2 split ring. And we get 20.38 grams. And now I just need the weight of the body itself, which is 16.16 grams. And since I know that this cherry wood has a density of 0.686, and that's in grams per cubic centimeter, I can go ahead and divide that into the weight of the lure, which is 16.16 grams. And we get a total of 23.56 cubic centimeters. That's the volume of our lure. We know the volume of the lure is 23.56. That means it's going to displace that much water when it sinks in the water. So what we need to find out is the weight of that displaced water. So we need to know what the density of water is, which in freshwater it's just 1 gram per cubic centimeter. But since we're going to use this in salt, we're going to use 1.026 grams per cubic centimeter. And if this is all seeming just a little complicated, it really isn't. It's actually pretty simple. It's just that when you're describing and explaining every little step, it just sounds pretty complicated. But if you want a little more information or more clarity on all this stuff, I did a couple of masterclass videos that explains all this, and I'll leave links to that in the description. In the meantime, all I'm going to do is multiply our volume, 23.56, by the specific gravity or density of water, salt water that is, which is 1.026. And that gives us right at 24.2 grams. Now that would be the total weight of the lure with all the hardware and everything if I wanted it to suspend, but I want it to sink. So I'm gonna add 15% to that, which gets us right to about 28 grams. Now, if you'll remember, the total weight of the lure was 20.38. So we'll subtract that from the 28, which is our target weight, and that gives us about 7.6 grams. So that is the amount of weight in lead that we're gonna add to it. So I cut slots in here for the wire harness with the Dremel tool, and it always comes out just a little rough, but it doesn't matter. It's all on the inside. I did make one little mistake. If you're looking close, you can see there's an extra little hole for the wire. I had it just shifted forward just a little too much. So I fixed that and I confessed to my error. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna temporarily assemble this before putting the weight in. Hold it together with a little bit of that Elmer's sticky tape stuff, because we need to figure out where I need to put the weight to make this thing nice and level in the water. And to prepare it for this next step, I put some tape on the top of it, making like a little tape fin, and I'm punching holes in it to hang it up, try to get it level. And here I'm drawing a level line, and I'm going to cross it with a plumb line. This is where I'm going to hang the lure. All right, so with this level line and plumb line in here, I can go ahead and hang this from the little pinhole that gets it hanging level. And since we have all the hardware on there, including the hooks, it should stay that way throughout the rest of the build. So all I'm going to do is stick a little pin through there that has a magnet on it, and I'm going to take a best guess at which hole is actually going to work. That's just my style. And I'll put that pin right at the little crosshair. So that looks absolutely perfect to me. So I'm going to mark where this line crosses the belly here without messing with it, because that's going to mark the center of gravity. And from there, I want to keep my added weight symmetric. So if it's right here and I need to add 4 weights, I'll put 2 on this side and 2 on this side and try to keep all the weights the same distance from that center line. So I'm going to add the weight in the form of split shots, and I want them to be in even numbers because I've got to distribute them evenly from my center of mass point forward and back. And they not only have to be the same weight forward and back, they have to be the same distance. And I found these, and they come to right at 7.52, which is close enough to 7.6, because we'll be adding another gram or so of negative buoyancy when we finish it. I'm going to put foil on it, the eyes, the paint, and the clear coat. At that point, it'll be just a little heavier, and that's perfect for me. Okay, with the locations for the weights marked and a little pilot hole drilled, I'm going to go ahead and drill out half the amount of volume I need, and half in the other side, obviously. And this is a 5/16 inch bit, a little big. So I'm going really careful, so not to go all the way through. And I'll get back to you when I got all these drilled. And after you've got them all drilled in, you check the alignment. And if it's a little off, like this one is, like a millimeter off. And I know this needs to move down a little bit. So I can take a Dremel tool and open up these holes just a little bit to the top. And this is just a little round grinding tool. Just working that little by little, that usually takes care of the problem. It's time to glue everything together with some 2-part epoxy. And let me get the glue. Okay, I don't have any. Great. I gotta go, I guess, to the closest place, I guess Ace Hardware. I'll be right back. And that's more than enough. And I'm just going to smear it. And then we'll just slap this bad boy together. Make sure it's properly aligned, and it is. And use our little clamps again. Making sure I don't throw it out of alignment when I'm squeezing it. And you know what, while it's setting, I'm going to go ahead and speed things up a little bit and then fill in the little extra hole here with some UV epoxy. And any little bit of gap on the seam. And this sets up super fast, and it'll give us a little bit of a head start. It's glued together. I also filled in the little tiny seam and sanded it back. It's really nice and smooth. Now I want to go ahead and create the fin. And I'm going to do that with a tongue depressor, but I need slots to be able to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and cut in some slots with the Dremel tool. And I've offset the slot, so this one's a little farther back than this one. I just think that it looks a little more natural if they're not perfectly aligned. And I shaped the bottom of this thing so it fits in that curved slot. Now I just need to draw out the shape, and then I'll glue it in and actually do the final finishing with the Dremel. And that's pretty much the shape I want. I'm going to cut off the excess. Well, I'm really happy with the fins and the finish, and the mechanics work really well too. The weight feels right, we'll see. But we're gonna have to end this video here because it's late on a Thursday night. I still gotta edit this and get it uploaded and everything for Sunday. So on the next video, we'll be painting this and fishing with it, hopefully in saltwater. All right, we made 50,000 subscribers just in the last couple of weeks, and I do plan to do a little bit of a celebration, maybe a bit of a giveaway. I'm hoping that on the next video, when we catch a fish, we can weigh it and we can do the guess the weight of the fish contest. Maybe we'll give this away. If you guys have better ideas for a giveaway, let me know in the comments. If you've got an idea for a lure that you'd like to see me make, put it in the comments. I do read them all. And if this video left you with more questions about weight and balance, I'll go ahead and put the playlist right here for all my master classes. Those videos are super informative. I'll see you guys on the next video.